It's a beautiful day in this hollow earth. A beautiful day for a hybrid. Do they shift shape? Boy, I feel great. Won't you be my cousin? Good morning, everybody, all around this hollow hologram earth. Woo! On Grammy week, are you fucking kidding me? We are getting hyped as fuck. We are taking it to the Grammys. We are heading out Friday. We are attending the Grammys all fucking weekend and seeing if we bring home the best packaging Grammy Award, y'all. We're going to be breaking down this album cover later today. We're going to be making a big old juicy beef stew video dedicated to the behind the scenes, the original artwork, the story behind this album, because it's pretty cool. There's a lot there to dig into, and we're going to have some fun. So we're going to really kick off the Grammy celebration today. We celebrating, y'all, because life is worth celebrating. Life is worth living to the fullest. I will tell you, you have no fucking idea how big your destiny is until you give it a chance and go out and start to look for it and explore it and go into the unknown and take those leaps of faith and be like, what the fuck would happen if I just go for it? Shit like this, because I'm a total goddamn fuck up. I could barely make it through high school. They had to give me the answers and push me out that goddamn door to get me out of the building, right? And here we are with another Hall of Fame motherfucking achievement. You know what I'm saying? Living that dream life, baby! But it all starts with the most important meal of the day, and this is shrimp for breakfast, y'all. Oh, yo! We having fun. We getting rolling. We rocking with these videos. I love waking up. This is the hypest way to wake up. Get myself hyped up. Get myself hyped up. Checking out the great questions that y'all have and just connected with you and hopefully giving y'all some of that energy, giving y'all some of that hype, giving some of y'all that inspiration, that extra get up and go. You know, nobody needs permission, but if you feel like you do, giving you permission to just be you, right? You got one life that we know about that you're living right now anyway, that this single version of yourself is living right now. And you have to, it's to, you know, please respect, like we said, respect your potential. You never know what's gonna happen. Beyond your wildest dreams could easily come true, right? What is happening in my life is beyond my wildest dreams. All the great work that I've done, living in this amazing forest that we're, you know, working on as a living artwork, living collaborative artwork with all these homies, always having homies come through. Always working on dream projects, you know, having the dream family life. Like, you can have your dream life. It's just about going and getting it, y'all. It's just about going and getting it, y'all. It is as simple as that. It's not more complicated than that. Is it a lot of work and thinking and shit? Hell yeah, but fucking life is either way. So you might as well, you know, if people could see all the choices, they would obviously choose that dream life. But for some reason, people don't have that vision. They don't have that thought process. Holla at your boy. We gonna get you hooked up. Hey, yo! Dream Life Broker over here. And of course, this is a motherfucking MMA, a motherfucking AMA. So let's jump into these questions, y'all. Oh, and of course, you know I gotta promote it. Coming out on 420, give The Lost Forest adult coloring book, one of my most fun, greatest projects to date. $17 pre-order. Get it on 416 in time for 420, so we can color on this thing together. You know what I'm saying? Color on it together. GhostshrimpGlobal.com. We got all the pre-order links. Barnes & Noble, Amazon. Let's do it. Let's put this shit on the bestseller list, y'all. Let's spread the gospel of Ghost Shrimp. This global gospel. All right. At next Tuesday, 7037 says, hey, Ghost. I was wondering, how do you come up with the technique you use to give your line quality that unique style using either microns or Higgins ink? Also, when making backgrounds for Adventure Time, what was your project like for envisioning what the backgrounds would look like? Much love back to ya, my cousin. The technique, right? That Ghost Shrimp line. It's funny. I've always wanted to have a signature feel to my look, a signature look to my brain's going a mile a minute this morning. Because I'm really starting to get hyped about this. It's really getting close. It's really getting real. I knew I always wanted to have a signature look, like, really wanted my work to be unique in every aspect. And, the line work really came from indie comics. That was the big inspiration, I feel like, directly, because my uncle, Steve Laffler, shout out, he was like the only professional artist that I was aware of. He does indie comics. He had a really cool comic with Fantagraphics in like the 80s that is called Dog Boy. And y'all can check that out. And then I think in the 90s, he had a comic called Bug House. Really cool shit. Still making indie comics to this day. True artist. And he was kind of the only person in my world that was doing something like that. And I thought it was really cool. We would draw together, during the holidays. I remember at my grandparents' house, he'd be like down in the basement inking pages and shit. And we would like sneak off and smoke weed together when I was a teenager and shit for fucking Thanksgiving and Christmas as I was getting older, later in my teenage years and my adult years. And then as I was becoming a young adult, I would go visit him in Oakland. He was living in Oakland at the time. And would go visit him and we'd really, share our love for art, and we would do some comic conventions together and shit. And he, in one of those basement inking sessions that I would bug him, I'd probably watch him for a few minutes, and then he was probably like, all right, keep it moving. But I remember he gave me a brush and showed me how to ink. And he also gave me that tip of like, put your, I think this was him, to put your bottle of ink in a little, one of those rolls of tape, like the packing tape. So in case you bump it, it doesn't knock over and spill. And I remember he would do that old school style of inking, of drawing, where you're drawing it with the blue pencil and then you're inking over that, because the process then wouldn't pick up the blue pencil. The scanning process or whatever process was being used at that point. It's such a different era when you think about being a professional visual artist in the 80s to, when I came out in the early 2000s, and even now. Those 20-year jumps are amazing in what technology has brought us. But he really set me up and kind of put me on that path of comics. He put comics in my head in a big way. Like, oh, people make comics. Like, I was watching cartoons and I was reading comics, but for some reason, seeing him make his comics really opened that up for me. And then, seeing at that time, Ren and Stimpy coming out. and me starting to connect the dots of all these things of like, oh, like people make art. Like I see this, I see my uncle making art, and then I see that there's these weird, things like Ren and Stimpy come along that I had never even seen. Like you have your Saturday morning cartoons, you have your GI Joe, all the shit that I absolutely still love. He-Man. He-Man's still such a cool cartoon. It's so weird. The world design is so fucking sick. And then along comes Ren and Stimpy, and it just like puts you outside of your box. You're like, what the fuck? It's like shocking and uncomfortable and gross. And there was just nothing like that. And Nickelodeon was just doing their whole thing with sliming people. It's all this era. I would go to my grandparents' house, and they had cable, and we would try to watch it there. This is all bundled together. And my grandma was like, I can't believe they slime people. This is disgusting. This is like he was like so disapproving of it. And he was like, this Ren and Stimpy show is absolutely gross. He was just like, he couldn't even like stand it. And he would change it to like college football. And we would like change it back and stand like right up close to the TV and watch like MTV or fucking Nickelodeon over there because we didn't have access to it at home. And it was just this whole thing of like getting it in my head that like, people make like someone like me, someone that I know, part of their life is making art at a professional level. And then I'm seeing that related to these weird cartoons and getting tapped into the other indie comics and going to conventions and seeing people who are making their own comics. And when I went to Pratt, me and my homie Joe Como got involved with the Static Fish. Ron Wimberly was part of the Static Fish. There were so many cool people involved. Ted Lange IV was running it at the time that we got involved as like freshmen. That I got involved and started doing some comics and inking with a brush. And as I was, in art school and experimenting with different things, drawing with pencil, fucking around with mixed media stuff. Mixed media illustration was really big at the time. Like physical mixed media illustrations that were like pencil and watercolor and colored pencil and fucking paint, and like that was like the whole vibe. And I'm kind of trying to figure out what my stuff is going to be, and I'm very like into the physical process. And the digital process is just starting to start, but not a lot of people are, unless they're making like super computer work, like design work, they aren't really, it's not really heavily digital at this point that I recall. Or like industrial design shit. Even they would draw it on paper and stuff. But yeah, as I got into my professional career and started doing those, well, we were doing comics for the Static Fish, and then we were doing short comics, and then one of those short comics turned into The Octopi in the Ocean, which was my first comic that I sent around to all the indie publishers, and Top Shelf was into it and they published it. My uncle had published with Fantagraphics back in the day. They weren't interested. That would have been really cool. My uncle at the time was, the Bughouse comics were with Top Shelf, and I sent it to them too. I sent it to everybody, and Top Shelf was like, let's do it. And I was very excited about it, and moderately happy overall with the release of that book. It was originally, I wanted it to be 12 by 12, which I think is the size of the actual pages. And it ended up being a smaller format. But I was really happy with how the book came out and how the book was received. I think I was nominated for like best new book, or best new artist, like in the Indie Comic Awards. I forget what those are, Ignatz Awards or whatever. We would during the Static Fish time and during this time, because it's all kind of, this all kind of overlaps. Like I was still in school when I was sending this book out. You know, I was like I said, it was like I was just raring to fucking go. Like I was like, okay, what's my? I'm in school. I'm like, where am I getting jobs after this? You know, what's the next step? Like scheming, planning, entrepreneuring. You know, I was building the Ghostshrimp identity at this time. You know, when I made my like website and web design class, it was like ghostshrimp.net, right? That was the inception of my website. And so I'm, you know, really, it's coming out of that indie comic shit. And so ink it with a brush and just that liquid ink, and something about doing it on some toothy paper, you know, some toothy watercolor paper, and the I always feel like, I always talk about how it's like your heartbeat is in that line. Like, you know, it's a little bit, if you're just starting out with it, it's a little bit, you feel a little bit clumsy, right? Of course, it's easier to grab a pen and draw because there is so much you can do with a brush. You know, obviously the tiny tip of it can do razor thin lines, and then you can really lay on it and get fat lines and everything in between. And you know, I don't even do that much wild stuff with my brushwork. Like the homie Ron Wimberly, like he does some wild stuff with the brushes. I've always really been so amazed at what he would do when he would bring in his pages, and you know, he would just go so hard. He's always been such an inspiration to me, especially in this, you know, and with what we're talking about now. And I've always loved that when you're really showing off that you're using a brush, and it's flourishy and it's flashy. And you know, I think my line work is actually pretty conservative. I think it's, but I wanted it to have some flavor to it, right? I hate, as we know, like I hate, like, you know, the default, the status quo. You know, I want something that is giving you some flavor, right? Coming out of the hip hop world, right? My another big part of my inspiration to create all at this time is the that golden era 90s hip hop shit. 93, like Wolfie's just starting to get into this shit now. He's 12, right? He's like, can I listen to Wu-Tang? Can I listen to blah blah? And I'm like, oh shit, man! Like all those albums have like fucking crazy, like X-rated pornographic interludes, like Redman and all this shit. Like, you forget the '90s interludes went hard. I don't even know if that's a thing anymore, but that, I guess all music. I don't know. I guess music as a whole is more explicit now. But man, there was just like straight up movie scenes from a porn in these interludes. So at this time, it's all that fucking raw, creative, DIY, fucking like come and take what's yours attitude of Wu-Tang and Nas and Tribe and De La, and like, you know, just this raw creative energy. And that's really what is, you know, where my vibe comes from. I'm like, you know, this is, I wanna come up and be fucking, you know, blowing people's minds, you know, coming out and being, you know, just like what, like when you first heard Wu-Tang hit, you know, now, you know, that's such a long time ago, and there's been multiple eras of stuff that's come off of that. But when you first heard those fucking those kung fu samples hit, it was a movie. It took you to a different world. And then, you know, them making this whole, you know, Staten Island, Shaolin, talk about creating your own reality and just telling your story within it, and the underdog story. You know, as I've been riffing in some of these videos, you see how I have this chip on my shoulder. You see how I have, you know, still this kind of just resentment against the mainstream, and pushing on the mainstream, and you know, defining myself as separate from that, and you know, wanting to come with that next shit, you know, to be able to step up to the mic and kick the illest freestyle, but in a drawing, you know, to drop something that is just like, oh shit, and is relevant in the culture, you know. So these are all things that are really planting the seeds of where my career is going to go. And looking back, it makes sense, right? Like, I wasn't just coming to be like, oh, I hope I can get some art jobs. Like, honestly, so many artists I know, like, I guess it's like maybe the average artist persona is like a more like mild mannered, like stressed, anxious, second guessing, right? Just like, for one reason or another, the majority of artists I know, not everyone, but the majority of artists I know are pretty like low key people. I'm obviously pretty high key. I'm obviously pretty all caps. And that comes straight out of that hip hop shit. That's what, they say, like, the music that comes along that's like separate from your parents is like what starts to define you. That's like your music. And for me, that was hip hop, where everybody was like, hip hop is ruining the world. And it's funny, I was thinking about this the other day too. They were like, put explicit lyrics on this and like, stamp these. And, that of course made us that was the validation that those were the versions you had to get, which is so funny. Like, that when they try to fight against it, when they push against it, it just comes through their fingers. It's you can't hold back the fucking Niagara Falls that is progress and culture and art and evolution and art as the soul of humanity, right? And it's insane to think about that, and how, they said, this is what was driving me out the other day. They're like, they said that this is gonna corrupt your mind, right? This is gonna be the end of society. And you know what? They aren't wrong. It killed off what was already dead, right? That was that inevitable next shit that left the old shit behind. It did come along and corrupt my mind in the best possible way, right? It inspired me to see beyond the status quo. Like, hip hop was one of those big things that broke the spell. To me, I was always super confused about those paradoxes in mainstream reality, about like, the goal is to be happy and healthy and live that dream life, but just do what everybody else is doing. And those are two very different things, right? And that was breaking my brain as a kid. It was making me act out. And the fact that I connected with that music and it comes through, and then, they were right. They're like, that's gonna be the end of what we know as stuff. And it was. It blew apart that PC bullshit, that veil of, we're all gonna pretend that everything's okay, but back here, we all really know it's not. Right? We all really know we're not happy, but we're all pretending that we are, right? That was the pair. I could see that there was that contradiction there, and hip hop was really the thing that gave me the insight into moving past that. And good old fashioned, you know what I'm saying? The algorithm on Instagram is killing me with this fucking weed shit, but fuck it, who the fuck cares? This puritanical bullshit. So, coming back to the fucking getting way spaced out, right? This is why we do it, to go on these tangents, to explore this new territory, to trip down memory lane. The line work, the style, the voice, it all comes out of that, really, like that hip hop and that those cool comics that were being made in the 80s and 90s, right? Those things are happening at the same time. And that culture, that countercultural vibe, you know what I'm saying? That was just like, that made sense to me, right? And you have to follow what makes sense to you. You have to follow your intuition in, right? And like this seems like a technical question, right? Like, where does this, but it has a root in your lifestyle, right? This is the whole point. It's not a job, it's a lifestyle, right? Like Rick Rubin's talking about in this great book that he dropped last year, the creative act, and thinking about David Lynch, the art life, right? Being an artist is not a 9-to-5 job. It's a lifestyle. You are embracing the path of creativity. You are devoting your life to the creative gods and what it means to, you know, to be a part of that energy. And you know, on Adventure Time, I used the microns just because like they were like, you know, you have to do these backgrounds so fast and inking takes twice as long. And with the micron, you know, because you develop certain hand skills when you're using a brush, they translate to even a micron in a weird way. Like you can kind of still tell that Ghostshrimp line work even when I'm using a micron that only does one type of line. It's weird. Like there's so much variation in the brush and there's so little variation in the micron pen, but I was still trying to get that flow and that, right, that expression of all the things I'm talking about. You're like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? But like we're going on this, where, you know, I'm thinking through this as we're talking about it, right? And I'm fucking, you know, blitzed on Cloud 420. 420! April 20th, Lost Forest, drop it! You want all aspects of your work to be speaking to people, right? The reason Adventure Time worked is because every part of it works. The backgrounds, the characters, the props and effects, the writing, the voice acting, the fucking editing, like the timing. There's not an aspect overall on average of Adventure Time that wasn't outstanding, right? So when you think about the ingredients of your work, right? Maybe someone doesn't think a lot about their line work, right? Maybe they are happy with it looking like everybody else's, but I want every aspect of my work to be, whether you know it or not, to be representing me as a creative animal in an infinite universe. All these things that I'm talking about, all these experiences that I'm riffing from, like, this is a code with information in it for you, to every other artist that's looking at it, to the future artists that will look at it, right? To artists in the past that maybe are looking at it somehow, right? When I always say this, when I looked at MC Escher's work, when I look at Mike Mignola's work, right? When I look at whatever work is inspiring me, there's information encoded in it. It is a secret message to people who know how to read it. It is, you know, more than I could ever get from a book or something else, because I'm tuned into that visual language. And if you think about it, it's the most old universal language, because before a language was ever written down, you know, humans were making drawings, right? And drawings became language. And some, you know, I mean, you know, all of written language is visual art. It's a visual meme. It's a representation of an idea, right? And this is what we're talking about when we're talking about respect your potential. Like, you are part of something that is servicing all of humanity, and then all of humanity is servicing whatever purpose we have in this bigger picture, right? There's no detail that is too small, from line work to coloring to concept to attitude, everything. Your life, your lifestyle. This is why people make boring work, because they have boring lives, boring careers, uninspired. Don't catch yourself wondering why you're not getting a reaction from your work, or getting to the place you want to be if you're sitting around and your lifestyle looks like everybody else's, your thoughts in your head are like everybody else's. That's not what a creative person is or does, right? You don't get to the NBA by fucking playing like an average high schooler, right? You get there by being different, by setting yourself apart from everybody else around you, right? If you want to be a high-level creative visual artist, you have to, everything about you should intuitionally and organically and in a fun, exciting, inspired way stand out and represent you and represent your uniqueness, right? That's the whole point of doing this. There's no other reason to do this, right? And what did I not talk about? Money, right? I could give a shit about money beyond how much do I need to make to keep doing this, right? To, you know, achieve our family life goals and continue to live the dream life, right? It's like water or gasoline or, you know, food, or right? It's like one component, right? And is never above the fun and the creativity of this all, right? So there's a doozy for you. We are coming back later today with the breakdown of this album cover, the story of this album. Don't miss it, y'all. Let's fucking go!